Hello and welcome to this Learn series with BI about sustainability and cooperative strategies. My name is Silvija and today I host Lars Huemer from BI and Knut Øksby from Millum. The theme for this case is sustainability-driven strategies and new supply networks. We will discuss, among other things, the success of Millum and also the challenges of building platforms with cooperative strategies and perhaps some ideas for solution. Welcome to you as well, Knut and Lars.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I will ask you to introduce yourselves in a second, but before we do that, Lars, could you say very briefly, why are we talking about cooperative strategies and sustainability?
We're talking about cooperative strategies and sustainability because I think they are very closely linked. If we want to succeed with being sustainable and the sustainability goals, cooperation, collaboration, working together will be key.
I got very curious and fascinated actually with this series after our initial briefing, Lars. And one of the things that keep popping up in my mind is rethink strategy. You're a strategy guy, and you have noticed how sustainability and sustainable business of the future requires a new way of thinking strategy. And so we are going to go through a very concrete case here of Millum with both its success so far and its challenges going forward. Would you please tell us a little bit about who are you? And we can start with Lars and then go to Knut.
Right. Well, I'm working as a professor at the Department of Strategy and Entrepreneurship at BI Norwegian Business School. I've been a BI for quite some time. My teaching is essentially based on the executive programs that we have. And in terms of research, the say quick and dirty answer would be it's been a focus on cooperative strategy and also trust. I wrote my PhD on trust and business relationships in 1998. So trying to understand and learn more about cooperative, collaborative arrangements and how to co-create value in various types of settings has been with me all the time. And that has been my way into the sustainability world as well.
Very cool. And you, Knut?
Yeah, my name is Knut. I have a Master of Law, and I started as working as a lawyer or somewhere in that field. And then I got into the entrepreneurial business and started up a company in early 2000 and has been working as an entrepreneur with startups ever since. And Millum is my first adoption. It has passed 20 years of endurance, so it's my baby.
Your longest or your biggest baby?
No, it's longest at least, and in all fairness, only that has succeeded.
But I think what I've learned about entrepreneurship through trying to be an entrepreneur with Learn, I had lots and lots of opinions. As well, I was just an investor or a board member, but now being an entrepreneur, I see one of the biggest signs of a sustainable entrepreneurial endeavor is the ability to survive for long enough. So we'll get there.
Thanks. I do agree.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us about Millum. Let's start there. We like to have a picture and a scene for the abstract concepts we are going to discuss. What is your company?
So our company is an e-commerce platform that basically handles the procurement for the big chains on the buying side after they have gone through their negotiation and got all their frame agreements on boarded. We kind of publicize those frame agreements out to their different buyers or people that are in position to set orders on the already existing frame agreements. And we kind of surveil those frame agreements over a period of time, then 1 to 2 years. So basically, when Choice, the hotel chain, is doing a frame agreement, they normally do as they do in a lot of that type of food and beverage industry. They have a frame agreement which is from 12 to 24 months of age, and then they have all these different price elements and stuff, and to surveil that, so the post-contractual phase of a contract, if you like. So that's what we started off with, and so we kind of took and handled the gray material that starts after the all fun stuff has gone, where you have all the fancy negotiation, and actually operationalized the procurement process. So you can actually move it from a theoretical savings to an actual savings. And that has been our start off point. So basically we have more than 90 different buying chains in Norway, Sweden, and one in Denmark, and then about 400 to 450 selling side wholesalers and producers. And then we trade about 35% of all the procurement in the Norwegian hospitality industry, and significantly less in Sweden, and then marginal in Denmark, but a total of about 10 billion NOK, and it kind of involves 15,000 simultaneous users throughout that kind of segment or market, if you like. So that's
just to understand, let's say Norgesgruppen needs to buy some more flour.
Yeah, they would be on the selling side. So this is typically the hotel chains, the restaurant chain. Norgesgruppen is definitely one of our biggest customers on the sell side. So they do have a lot of trade coming from our network. But what we achieved by putting Millum as a neutral and independent player in that supply chain was that we actually were able to give the buy side the opportunity to have a technology that was not owned by the sell side or a group of sell side, making it much more easy than to actually change from one wholesaler to another. That would be a totally different picture if it was Norgesgruppen's solution that was
platform.
The one that traded on. Then you would have a tech change in addition to a lot of other stuff when you change to another wholesaler. So it has a lot to do with kind of making a safe, neutral, and independent position in the supply chains to avoid tech coming as a part of the power game that we will definitely talk about during our session, which is constantly and very much under the radar for a lot of the people that are on the buying side or on the selling side until they get into the mix, where you can see it's a bit more rough than you would normally anticipate when you just go to a hotel and buy.
I have to paint a picture so that people can imagine basically your business. So I'm a little hotel. Let's say I'm a Lampeland hotel where I slept last night, and I need to buy groceries for my kitchen. So I would go to Millum. And on Millum, I would decide which wholesaler can give me the monthly package that I need at the moment. Is that the right picture?
No, it's. I'm sorry, it gets maybe a bit too detailed, but normally then this solution will match the bigger entities on the buying side. Otherwise, you would normally then if Lampeland called me, I would maybe recommend them to go to a society or a procurement company, or go to NHO, which has their own procurement team that you as a member of NHO could piggyback on. And NHO is using our solution. Okay. So basically it is we are not negotiating any prices on products, and we are not letting any on the sell side come into our solution unless they already have an agreement with the buy side.
So I would then become a member of, let's say, NHO tourism or whatever they're called, and then I would use their procurement access on your platform to get my goods from the chosen wholesaler.
From the chosen wholesaler producers based on what NHO has achieved in their negotiation with those entities.
Right. So this is sustainable, or more sustainable than the pre-existing solution, because of what, Lars?
Well,
where's the sustainability in this?
I think I would like to let Knut sort of slowly, if that's okay, come into that, because there's an interesting journey, I think, within Millum where sustainability gradually has been embedded in that platform. Would you agree, Knut?
Yes, humbly, and that's why I started off with that. It's quite. We started off with kind of the gray materia, but it's still a very it's a cooperative achievement, I would say. We were able to get all these competitors in the HoReCa segment, all the different, personal restaurants, all restaurant chains, all the different hotel chains, more or less all of them, to be able to be on the same technology, but with different frame agreement, different terms in terms of pricing and stuff like that. So we have both Choice and Scandic buying meat or beverages or flour or whatever, or vegetables on our platform, but they have different frame agreements and they have different prices. I don't know the prices, but the point is that we were able, because it's not that controversial to have a procurement platform that now has become a network for the segment. Now we have more than 50% of the subjects and more than 35% of the actual volumes of operational cost of procurement on that platform. And we were able to do that because we we can cooperate on these things, but we will not go in and we will not trade on behalf of you, or we will not go in and do the controversial stuff. But
so you managed to make competitors collaborate in certain parts of getting,
and of course where it's not that critical. But what we see now, and to Lars' point, where and that's why I think Lars has a very good point when he says that cooperative strategies and sustainability are very linked together. Because the first thing that started is typically that all the hotel chains and restaurant chains, they went and tried to prevent the government to make a new law in regards to salt, sugar, and fat in the content. And they also, or especially they wanted to avoid them to make a law against food waste, which they did in France. And then by doing that, they committed to do certain things. And one of the things that they kind of agreed upon was that would be a very good place to start is on that network where you already have that technology. There's hundreds of different small tech firms trying to come in, and we can handle food waste, we can handle nutrition, or we can handle this and that. And they say, oh God, can we put it in one system and we can kind of kern the data from the procurement to the what's in the warehouses to what's thrown, and kind of kern that all together in one system. And we did.
So I think back to your question, Silvija, what is sustainable about this? My take on it would be that Knut managed to identify a space where cooperation was possible and feasible. He joined that with a technical solution, and therefore made natural competitors collaborate in parts of this. And that is, at least, it doesn't by definition imply that things will get more sustainable, but you're in a better position.
Two things I'm thinking. One is the sustainability goal number 17 about collaboration, which we've talked about previously with Lars. At the heart of all the other, you can't get the other 16 SDGs or ESGs unless you actually manage to do this collaboration thing. So you make it smart and easy for people to collaborate. And then the other thing I'm thinking is eventually this leads to, to better quality products, less waste, and also a better competitiveness for the buyers, because you have kind of provided them with some pricing insights as well, which they wouldn't have otherwise.
But I think that's I think that if we are able to kind of move sustainability from a corporate advantage to say this has to be placed on a higher shelf in somewhat, there has to be an understanding that the industry as such needs commonly to address a thing. And they did with food waste. They committed to reduce salt, sugar, and fat on their guests. And there's all of these kind of settlements where the only way we can measure it. And we can also put into the quotation here that we can mark different, products with different symbols, and like I'm here in Arendalsuka now, together with Factlines, which is it's with the new åpenhetsloven. That is
transparency law, I think.
Didn't have that on the fly, but you are quite correct. And the point then is that we have been addressing that issue for 4 years in the solution by putting up symbols on the product line, or the producer that they're actually doing the surveys needed to be transparent. And it's been a stalemate in 4 years, and of course with COVID as well. But we have the technology, and we can fit that directly on one specific order line that will go into your basket, and then will be a procurement. And at the same time, we have CO2 equivalent calculation in the menu bank, so you can have, this is what this menu will cost. This is what the allergies are aggregated. This is what the nutritions are aggregated. And this is the CO2 equivalent aggregated. And then, of course, on top of that, you can then take out animal protein, or you can change red meat to white meat, or you can then, and you will see initially that you have kind of optimized that dish. And by doing that, you toolificate CR, and you do that on behalf of not one, but you do it on behalf of a segment. And of course, the cost of actually operationalize CR then will be a fragment of what you normally would have.
What I understand you say then is that also, as the same way as MasterCard has a unique window into insights about our financial transactions, or Miljödirektoratet is working very much on their Miljödata platform to understand, everything from situation of our forests and satellite pictures to the import of endangered species, etc. You have the opportunity to aggregate data on both pricing, but also contents and quality of fast mover consuming goods related to the HoReCa market. And therefore you can optimize that market in very sustainable ways.
Yeah, of course. And it's quite interesting to see that that all our customers on the buy side, they feel a corporate responsibility, but it has been it's getting harder and tougher all the time, but it has been a competitive advantage, and they want to look good. But it has also been a lot paired with their businesses, that they have less hot water, less cleaning, smaller plates, and it's kind of been hammering a bit on the customer experience. And at the same time, they have the millennials coming in, demanding and asking questions regarding where's this meat coming from, where is the blah blah blah. I mean, all those different things. And our intention is not to be anything but a facilitator. By using tech, we can address all this, but we can also it's it's an opportunity. We are facilitating, but what we can do is that we can operationalize not only the trade, but also operationalize to a large extent the regulations, as we've done, for instance, with food information that came in 2014. We actually operationalized Article 9 in that food regulation and put that into our system as system data. So you can actually do, as I said earlier, aggregate information when you go from buying something in a shop where you have a declaration on the package to a new meal, which maybe consists of 25, 30 different items, which has become a new product, which is a meal. And then you can actually have that information follow all the way through, which then
you can be the authoritative certifier or guarantee body for the both regulatory aspects, but also quality aspects on top of that.
I wouldn't take that hat on. I would say that I will facilitate for transporting the regulated information through the process. We will never go in and do an editing. We will never take on our hat and say that, but we will facilitate.
Exactly.
So you can actually come in as a potential customer in. And you can come in not being a customer earlier, come into our system, and you will have a tick on a lot of these boxes by using the system.
So Knut, I've got two claims. I'm curious about how you will react to them. So one would be, if I would suggest that reasons for your success is something you mentioned earlier, the neutral technology with an emphasis on being neutral. And then you work on transparency. So neutral technology and transparency has, I would guess, greatly influenced the success. And the other claim would be that if you look at the way you work, I think a good combination is a supply chain manager who understands strategy or a strategist who understands the supply chain. When you combine these, you see the bigger picture.
Yeah, you do. But my experience is that we see the big picture. We see the facility effects, the external network effects. But it's a lot of porters. It's a lot of I bleed, but you bleed more mentality in our client base as well. But still,
and that takes us to some of the challenges that you also have experienced.
I think one of the biggest challenges that you normally will have in any startup and in any business is that you're never fully able to understand the counterforces that will come as a consequence of you having a minor success. So you will have setbacks and you will have new activities posted against you to try to take you out. And paradoxically, I mean, I have examples. I went to Australia and wanted to reinvent the supply chain of the wine industry there on invitation from the biggest winemaker, which were massive and significant volumes. And we have all the data we needed to be able to calculate we had the actual cost for these different big, like 5,000 employees, etc. And we kind of wanted to merge their value chains into one supply chain where we kind of utilize the assets on behalf. So you said that everybody had a rest capacity on the warehouse on 30-40%, that we can actually utilize all of that and we can make them all more prosperous. We would save or create massive amount of value on behalf of a significant amount of winemakers, and still the founding entity said no, because there was a change of hearts, there was a change of management, and their mentality was back to the jungle. I bleed, you bleed more. We have now been able to build the coolest supply chain by the Norwegian experts, and we can now use that as a weapon to actually kill our neighbors. And that's why I have a bit of an Australian accent as well. But it's so brutal that you kind of. But we save you like 60 million NOK a year you will have a saving 14 million NOK in total revenues generated per year in dollars. No.
Yeah, so my understanding of what happened in Australia, and it also partly happened in the Nordics, was that what you wanted to do was better resource utilization, which is about sustainability.
Absolutely.
Better utilization of warehouses, better utilizations of trucks, and so forth and so forth.
We had a measurement. I have to address it. We measured Swedish line haul transport, and it in capacity booked or capacity spoken, they seemingly had 300% more, also 3 times more transport than the capacity. And actual measurement, they transported about 50% air. And everybody would say, what's happening? And of course, then if you go into any transport company today, you will say that I would like to have 1 pallet. And then you would like to have 2 or 3 pallets. And suddenly you'll have, it would be better for you to buy a whole lorry, because 3 pallets equals to a full lorry. Okay, I have a full lorry, but you only use 35% of that capacity. And that was filled with additional pallets, but at the same time, they're not efficient enough and they compete with the other 3PLs. So it's just a nightmare. And it's just running around like, it's absurd.
But again, going back to the picture, so this for me is a very good picture of an area where it's very natural for these competitors to collaborate. So we are going into this compete, collaborate dance that Lars is talking about.
In theory, it should be, but then there's a nice article in Harvard Business Review, I think it's from 97 by Fisher, and the title of that article is, "What is the best supply chain for your product?" If we carefully analyze that title, we can see that the focus is on a physical product, so the product owner or the retailer, and then we have designed our thinking around the physical product. And you think about, I want the supply chain that is best for my product. That's a reasonable opinion from a production point of view. But Knut was, and then you build a supply chain and you try to create trust within that supply chain. What Knut has been trying to do is to build trust between supply chains, creating a supply network. And that's basically what logistic service providers do. They try to consolidate a number of flows into a network setting. But then, as you mentioned, Sila, then you need to have some space, some area in that supply system where you can find a collaborative mindset. But if you're too competitively oriented, you will maybe destroy that network ambition and just focus on what's best for your system. And then you end up underutilizing lots of logistical resources.
Can I just back 1 second? Lars, I need some help. Difference between the supply chain and the supply network. Can you please help us with that?
So in this way, a supply chain would be one importer of wine, and how this importer sources its wine from a producer somewhere in the world and end up at the retailer, at Vinmonopolet. And if you want to have full control, you will make sure that your products are transported in a very sort of embedded, predictable, and you have control of all these phases. Now, if you want to make a supply network, then you will try to make many importers join, so that they will fill the trucks, they will utilize the resources, warehouses in a better way. And so you have a number of importers with the importers will see their own supply chain, but Knut will see the entire network and try to sort of provide synergies between these. Knut.
Yeah, but I think as you are well aware of, and has been kind of haunting the fast-moving consumer goods arenas around the world for the last 2-3 decades. It started off maybe with Walmart, but basically it's importers' value chain logic that you kind of move from your power situation. You build a power base and then you move up or downstreams and you kind of take as much as you can. And the point is that type of logic also exists in parts, for instance, of logistics. So in terms of shipping, you had for 20 or 30 years ago, the Norwegian shipping lines had offices in Melbourne. But then the freight forwarders came in, and the freight forwarders, they go around to each of these winemakers and say, could you give us your mandate, and I will consolidate that into a massive buying power towards the shipping lines, and we will get a better deal. And the point then came that they pushed the shipping lines out, absolutely out, pressed the margins out, and stood with, as DHL and Schenker and Hillebrand and those entities, owning Manchester United and sponsoring Formula One. They made heaps and tons of money by going in and kind of using that consolidated power to some extent to the benefit of the to the winemakers, but only as long as there's multiple networks. But then they get to go over the burden of being an actual oligopoly. And then they start to increase the prices. And that's where we came in as a transparent, neutral, and independent structure of, even though a freight forwarder is not owning their own ship, they have the shipping lines by the neck and dictating to all practical, so they actually own the supply chain because they've made the shipping lines slaves. And then by kind of disrupting that, and that of course needs tech and some mandates. And so that's why we kind of cried in our bed for a week when that kind of imploded. But the potential of unwinding those power structures by using tech, using the same technique, if you like, but then base it on transparency and trust, and not taking, I give you a reduced price, but you don't know actually the price I'm buying it for, which is the fact with the freight forwarder. They give you $1 less than the market price for a 40-feet containers, and you will take it. But you have actually given away your biggest assets, and that is your buying power, which is not big enough isolated. But if you consolidate it in another way, you would have a not much better position. And of course, then you will live with the market fluctuations and stuff like that, but you wouldn't have the biggest container ship going belly up for 4 years ago. You wouldn't have that instability. And I still think it's, and we've shown it, it's a massive saving and increasing in income of the actual value makers in the value chain. So it's itching in my fingers to readdress that thing, actually.
It's very hard to make others see the bigger picture, and you have really different business models, different logics of how and where value is created that need to be sort of synthesized.
But I think that's it's quite interesting when we talk about, if you talk about sustainability and we talk about cooperative strategies. I think that the lack of understanding of that power game in the supply chains, it's total. I mean, if you go to the Norwegian competitive authorities, or if you go to the average man in the street and wondering why groceries goes up and down, and you can see that those consolidation has been ongoing for so many years that they become oligopoles. And when they're oligopoles, they can start to address the market and define what you're getting, to what quality and to what price, which is, I mean, it's common knowledge. So, but they've done that by consolidating the supply chain, not by, I mean, being a retailer, wholesaler, and a producer, which are common now for all the grocery players in the whole wide world. If you go to Walmart, the biggest Coke or cola selling is Walmart Cola, and if you go to Adels in UK, the biggest red wine is Adels Best. And if you go to Norway, I'm sure that you will find some interesting calculations on jam and different stuff and coffee. It's been a bloodbath for the last 20 years, moving, and they've just been good enough to see to it that the end customer is not getting an increase, at least. And then the competitive authority says, well, it's good for the citizen, And everybody shopping food in Norway knows that's not a fact. It sucks, if I'm allowed to say that.
So I have noted a few phrases that I think I would like to repeat for the students, because I think they capture what we're talking about really well. So Knut, you talked about unwinding power structures and, the established incumbents in supply chains and supply networks that have consolidated very much of their control over those supply networks and thereby become sort of oligopolies that can then be market makers. And this doesn't really lead to efficient competition or efficient pricing for the end users.
No, exactly. Could I give you one example of that? Because I know I talk a lot, but we've in Millum, we've together with Innovation of Norway and UK Chamber of Commerce and Norwegian-German Trade Chamber, we have done surveys in the different countries, and it's quite interesting if you look to Finland, for instance, because in Norway we've been there for 20 years. You will see none of the big players on the sell side, like the wholesalers, owning much of the hotel or restaurant or catering industry. They have some pizza things, and they have the kiosk and petrol station thing and Deli de Luca and some of those. So you can find them. They're Reitan-gruppen and Norgesgruppen. They are taking that, but they haven't been into the HoReCa segment. But if you look to Finland, then you will see that the biggest wholesaler, the biggest retailer for groceries, also are the biggest hotel runner, has the biggest hamburger restaurant chain and all of that. And it's kind of because they have moved up in the value chain and they kind of moved all different direction. And what's interesting, maybe in Norway, which not too many know either, is that the biggest wholesaler has a procurement pool like NHO has, like Norway has, that is trading on behalf of different, on the buy side in the HoReCa segment, but it's owned by Norgesgruppen. But it is in competition with different other independent NHO and Norges, and it's called Konsumgruppen. And it's quite interesting to say that that's maybe a way that they have broken through and gone up in the value chain. So they're not owning the entities, but they're owning their procurement or getting their procurement. And of course, they can create quite good competitive pricing structures in that structure, which is, I'm just saying that this is the economical laws that moves. It's not illegal and it's good for business and stuff like that, but neutral and independent kind of creates something that these entities not necessarily does, but they do a lot of great as well. So I wouldn't kind of hammer Norgesgruppen for doing those things, but it's interesting. They own it first 40% and now they own it 100%. But they move in that. They are extremely strategic when it comes to moving up and down in the value chain, which they should until they're not allowed anymore.
In the interest of our format and time, I need to ask Lars to do a strategic summary. So if you would like your students, Lars, to pick up a couple of ideas from what we talked about, what would you like them to think back on?
I would like them to think back on the illustration that Knut has been kind to give us in terms of the link between cooperation, collaboration, and sustainability. That at least in parts of so to identify the scope for not only creating a competitive advantage but also a cooperative advantage where you can co-create value with someone else. And this is important in terms of sustainability because in the settings that Knut has informed us about, the utilization of resources, sharing resources, not wasting space, be that in a warehouse or in a truck or other type of informational resources, is massively important. So try to identify the scope for collaboration. It might always be there. It's not easy. It's very hard, and we might talk more about that later on of building these networks. When you try to build a platform, build a network, the most important resource is, of course, the network itself. And if you don't have one, how do you go about? How do you become interesting in terms of mediating these services? And this is something we also have looked upon earlier. So something like that.
Digitalization, I think, is very often about creating new ways of mediation. And Millum is a great example of that. In a focused area applied to Horeca, if I understood correctly. And I think it's really interesting to see how we might also have some national advantages. There are issues with doing this in Norway as well, as Knut has very well explained. But from what I've heard from you, Knut, it's even harder in Australia. So,
yes, but that was. But I think we have to bear in mind that what we talked about, what we started off with, was size and composition in Norway. Was we got critical mass of that order execution post-contract, which is not very controversial. What we did in Australia was that we took the logistic part, the movement of goods from cellar door to retailers in 48 countries. That is the heart and soul of any winemaker, to have control over that. And I think that kind of is something about where can you start off creating cooperative strategies. It might be that you would not start off with sales, marketing, and logistics, based on my experience, because then you have to have you have a very convincing, and we had a very convincing scope. We've proven scope of multi-million-dollar savings, and it didn't fly. So what is then, because there are people going out from universities every year, learn to be in competition, not in cooperation. And
Millum went for more, say, low-hanging cooperative fruits in that sense.
Yeah. But the interesting with that Millum case is that we can then add on more, because it's now super efficient for them to be able to get sustainability, like CO2 equivalent measuring, food waste, transparency law, and we can then put that on the already existing flow of more than 10 billion sold of goods. And then you get some interesting findings of that, which cannot be, they're in our system, and we can kind of aggregate on that as well. And that is just maybe pure luck. We started off very early in the internet phase, and as a B2B e-commerce, it's kind of unheard of being 21 years, which it is. But we were lucky, and we were quite, we were aware of the fact that we would be a vertical. We kind of addressed very specific market. We didn't go all flat or horizontal. We kind of went into a specific market and then got entanglements that created a competitive advantage on the ones that were on board. So that kind of drew more on board, and it was open bazaar. Everybody was welcome.
I think these are very important points you're making, Knut. I think in the digital space, trust and relationships are maybe even more important than in the physical space, because that's all you can work on when you don't have the physical interactions. And it's really, really interesting to see how, in this case of yours, sustainability is a part of your strategy. You're not doing it because you want to sound good. You're doing it because it both makes strategic sense, but also is a necessary driver for where we're going.
Yeah, it's a necessary driving, and it's driven by the guests of our clients on the buy side, and it's driven by so it's kind of, we're talking about, we have some hard law that actually demands that you need to do this and this to be in compliance, which then of course our clients are extremely law abiding in general. And then of course you have the more soft values that comes from all these guests asking questions on how are you handling food waste, or how are you handling your people. And they're all having these into their yearly kind of, they communicate with the market also indirectly. And of course, when you do a hotel conference, and the public or the public Norway is asking for that. They demand that you have ecological food. They demand that you have a CO2 measurement. And they have all these demands when they go out and create bids. So you need to kind of comply that. And of course, the big cantinas that go in outsourced into like the Norwegian bank or whatever, they get a specification of what are demanded of them as a restaurant to be able to operate on these. And of course, the demand from the guest or the ones asking for the bids are often very high. That's because they don't have to do that themselves. They can just demand, which is beautiful in the CR space. It's a lot of talk down here in Arendal. It's a lot of talk. And it's fascinating. We are only into the operational part of it. And it's nearly not here. It's a lot of talk, but it's a very...
But I think operationalizing sustainability is super important. And I think that's probably going to be the trend for the next year. And then in addition to that, I think thinking new about strategies that create this sustainability is super important, which is why I'm so excited about learning about this from Lars. I would like to thank you both very much, and thank you to our listeners as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.